We all experience some form of fear in our lives. And so, we all look for courage at certain times in order to deal with the fears that we have to face. However, there are what St. Thomas Aquinas says, there are two groups of people who don't feel like they need courage at all. There are those who cannot see any danger ahead, and the youth, the young people, who often regard themselves as being more capable than what they really are. But for the rest of us will experience fear at certain times, and therefore in need of courage. Perhaps one of the most common types of fear that people have is the fear of the unknown future. This is probably so, especially today during this coronavirus pandemic around the world. Many fear for their health, while others fear for their jobs and livelihood. This all comes about because people cannot be certain about how their life will look like beyond the present crisis. So in this way, we are like the disciples in today's gospel, who are traveling on a boat during the middle of the night, and it is dark, and so they cannot see far ahead. And at the same time, they are battling against this heavy sea and a headwind. So perhaps some of us may feel like we are currently up against a headwind in the current circumstances of our lives that continue to prevent us from moving forward to where we want to be. Perhaps some of us may even feel like the prophet Elijah in today's first reading, who ran away to the mountain of Horeb, the place where God had revealed himself to Moses, because Elijah was fearing for his life. We know that there are people who are fearing for their lives at this moment in time. So like Elijah, some may be waiting for God's presence to preserve their life and bring them courage during this fearful period. Others may be like the disciples, fearful in not being able to see far beyond the present moment and hoping for some breakthrough or guidance to arrive at their intended destination. So in answer to this, the readings today tell us that in the midst of fear, God does come to calm our anxieties, the anxiety of those who look for him. But he does not necessarily come in the way that we would expect. Now, in today's first reading, the prophet Elijah was looking for God, firstly in the wind, then in the earthquake, and finally in the fire. After all, it made sense for him to look for God in these things, because it was at the same mountain that Moses and the people of Israel had encountered God in a very powerful way, with thunder and lightning, and the Lord descending in a fire, according to the book of Exodus. But on this occasion with Elijah, God was neither in the wind, the earthquake, or the fire. So it turns out that God came in a gentle breeze. Similarly, the disciples in today's gospel were frightened because they did not expect Jesus to be walking on the lake towards them. So they were terrified because they thought that they were seeing a ghost. I think what these two instances show us is that while we may be looking to God for some form of deliverance, we also have to be open to his mode of appearance. Now, it may not be what we would have expected. But when God does come, he immediately fills us with a confidence that we could not have acquired on our own. Now, we see Elijah immediately, he comes out of his hiding place when he realized that God was in that gentle silence. And Peter was confident enough, when he thought it was Jesus, he was confident enough to follow Jesus' instruction to come to him across the water. However, the experience of Peter also reminds us that the coming of God does not mean that everything will happen automatically from then on either. Even though Peter was filled with enough courage to start walking towards Jesus, start coming to him, the force of the wind was enough to frighten him again. And so I think this shows us that the gift of God's grace doesn't mean automatic deliverance from all fears. Instead, it still requires continual work on our part to firstly accept such a grace from God, and then to continue to move towards Jesus even when further troubles arise. So today, let us firstly not be blind to recognizing Christ as our companion and our help, especially during times of fear and weakness. This was a source of great anguish for St. Paul in today's second reading. That the people of Israel did not see the grace that Jesus Christ offers them. Otherwise, they would have experienced something even greater. And so St. Paul has this great sense of anguish for his people. So after this realization of God's presence being near us, may we then know to call on him during the times of fear and to respond faithfully to his grace when he does come to lend us courage for our journey towards him.